Juanga was born to sing at Bellas Artes. But before his legendary 1990 concert, that idea was unthinkable. This is No Me Provoquen, a podcast about the woman who dreamed up an impossible concert and made it happen.
How did I get Juan Gabriel to Bellas Artes? It's quite the telenovela.
The performance of a brown popular artist in a white palace. No Me Provoquen is available on any podcast platform.
I could hear him twice. I could hear him through the wall. And at the same time, I could hear him on the phone. Whoever was calling was very close to me. Very good evening to the best community on the internet, to the best community in the world. Very good evening to you who are part of this, which is no longer just a podcast, but a space where we continue remembering our stories, those that have built us, and also, of course, the stories of those who are no longer here, the memories that keep them close to us. Thank you for joining us for another night, this time talking about presences from other planes that manifest as if wanting to tell us something. We will speak of terrifying stories, and also of deaths that don't end with a goodbye, of those ghosts that don't seem to want to scare us, but rather to stay a little longer among us. Tonight we will listen to stories in which terror and nostalgia go hand in hand. So if you are ready to listen to the following stories, and believe you will manage to survive the fear of these experiences that are much closer to you than you now think. Yes, turn off the light, get comfortable, and let yourselves be carried away by the following tales of the night. Ulysses always fell asleep on me when we had barely been in class for half an hour. I had been teaching for 2 years at that time, and maybe I hadn't learned to understand why. Because children fall asleep. About him, I knew that he came from very far away, that he arrived with signs of fatigue, that he wasn't like the other children in the town who walked a few blocks to get to school. Ulysses came from far away, truly, from the mountain. The only way left for him to study was that, to make that same journey every day. The school he went to before had closed because there were no more children studying. They had all gone to work with their fathers in the fields, had fled to some bigger city, or had been taken to work with the bad people. I'm not talking to you about the 80s or the 90s. This was happening just 10 years ago, and from what I know it continues happening the same way. But at that moment a story like that surprised me a lot. That's why I never scolded him. I also didn't let the others make fun of him. Ulysses sat in the back and I would pass by and give him a gentle knee nudge just to wake him up. And he would open his eyes and start acting as if he had been taking notes. But then he was absent. 1 day, 2, 3. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I gave him time before talking to him. I didn't want to harm him. I didn't want to report him to the administration. And that Wednesday I was going home when it was already getting dark. You could still see clearly, but they had already turned on the town's lights. I really liked that time. That combination of lights, the coffee color of the earth, of the streets, of the dust on the walls of the houses, the yellow light that came out through the windows and that blue sky almost black, and observing that combination with attention when among a cornfield next to the road. And a figure moved walking parallel to me. You could barely see a little head above the cornfields that I recognized as disheveled. I would have recognized that messy hair anywhere. Ulysses. I shouted, and the figure stopped. The boy peeked out from among the corn, barely surprised that I had recognized him, that I had seen him. Many people in town feel that those of us who come from the city see them from afar, without him coming out of his hiding place. I told him not to miss school anymore, that he couldn't miss more classes, that he was going to fall behind and then it would be very difficult to catch up. I just saw his little head peeking out, that innocent look, despite being the tallest boy in the class. I felt him hide. He disappeared from sight before leaving. I told him he was one of my best students. That class wasn't the same when he wasn't there. And I already thought that. I swear I already thought that but I had never told him. At that time, I didn't open up so much with my students. Well, that's how they had taught me to be so clear, so direct, to show them affection. They had taught me that wasn't right. And when I told him that I just saw how the cornfield moved, as if he had run away, and well, at least I didn't remain wanting to say it. I was certain that the next day he was going to go to school with enthusiasm. I had the certainty that I needed to say it and that he needed to hear it. But that Thursday, Ulysses was absent again, and also on Friday. When leaving class, I approached the principal. I told him I didn't believe Ulysses was sick because I had seen him around town on Wednesday. The principal answered me not to worry, that surely he had come down that day for medicines. But his grandfather, who lived alone with him, that surely if the man was sick, as soon as he recovered, he was going to return. And to reassure me, he told me that, anyway, he was going to send some of the boys to go up and look for him to make sure everything was fine. That Sunday, the principal came to see me at home. As soon as I saw him at the door, I knew something bad had happened. He told me he sent 2 6th-grade boys to look for Ulysses, that they came back scared, crying with very bad news. Ulysses' house was complete misery. The fields around were dry, with nothing to give. There were still the bodies of Ulysses and his grandfather, with signs of having been dead for days. Perhaps last week. The only thing they found alive by miracle was Ulysses' dog, which he, surely with his last strength, had the opportunity to release because the grandfather always tied him up. There was the dog without food, drinking water from a puddle. The poor thing refused to leave the yard of that house, even when the boys who went up tried to carry him to take him to town. The strange thing is how death looks in that place, in such a small town. The strange thing for me is how no one doubted when I said I saw Ulysses among the corn, even when he had been dead for days. The school principal himself told me that maybe the only thing he needed to leave was for me to tell him he was a good boy. And he was. But no one ever told him. The other teachers, he had surely got annoyed when he fell asleep in class. And that, believe me, that happens a lot in Mexico. In towns where children arrive at school hungry because not everyone is going to take them. Not everyone is going to leave them with their lunch ready to study. It's not like that at all. That was the first and only time in my life that I have seen a ghost, or what I believe was a ghost. I hope he was able to hear me. Ulysses' dog stayed to live at the school. He was still there, already old, but always playing with the children. I swear, community. I suppose out of nostalgia or because, despite everything, I still haven't lost hope that someday my father will return. The little house is still there, on the edge of Telchak, facing the sea. He built it more than 30 years ago, when I was just a child. It was a modest house, made of concrete, with colonial walls. From the first day it was painted white, but that didn't last long. The sea erases everything it wants to erase. Anyone who is listening who has the fortune of living nearby surely already knows. After my mother passed away, my father remarried. A couple of years later. No, that didn't bother me, but somehow, it did hurt me. On one hand, I wanted him to continue his life, for my old man not to be left alone. But on the other hand, it felt very strange to see someone else in that house, in that chair, looking out that window. And since I was already of age and didn't want to be in the way, I went to live in Puerto Progreso, where they had offered me work. It wasn't far from Telchak, and every so often I went to visit my father. At first, every Sunday to watch soccer together, but with time the visits became phone calls. Later WhatsApp messages, and sometimes not even that. The last time I spoke with him with relative normalcy was for my daughter's birthday. I invited him to Puerto Progreso, but he didn't want to come. He said his wife no longer felt comfortable in other places, that she was getting worse and it wasn't good for her to go out with people she didn't deal with much, that sometimes she got lost, that there were days when she didn't even remember who he was, and I didn't know what to say to him. I suppose no one knows what to say when someone you love so much is losing the person they share their life with. His wife, Mrs. Ophelia, got sick little by little. At first it was just absent-mindedness, then confusion, headaches that wouldn't let her think, then nothing. She no longer recognized him. She no longer spoke. My father told me she had good days and very bad days, but there were many more of the latter. And then, one night, the sea simply took her away. That's what they told me, what he himself told me over the phone that dawn, trembling between screams while waiting for the neighbors to arrive. But there, in that area of Telchak, the houses are separated from each other. A lot. Sometimes you have to walk a good while to get to the next one. No one arrived in time to help him. The authorities much less looked along the beach, in the sea, along the road. They even went to look for her in town, but there was no trace of her. Nothing. With the wind that was blowing and knowing the urges she got to go into the sea when she woke up confused, they told my father not to keep many hopes, that she had surely gone to the sea as she had already tried. But this time no one was there to stop her. And after that, my father began shutting himself in. He no longer answered me. He never put credit on his phone again. I would put it for him to be able to talk to him, so he would return a call to me. Sometimes, after many attempts, he would send me a short message saying he was fine, that I shouldn't go, that I shouldn't visit him, that there was nothing left to do. There I would insist. I would tell him to come with me, to stay here in Progreso, that he needed to distract himself, that here we could watch soccer on Sundays like before, that my little house, even though it was small, would always open a space for him. But he said that little house by the sea and his memories were his life, that he couldn't abandon it, and then he stopped answering me. And it wasn't strange. At first I expected it, and I think that's why I got used to it. But days passed, and this time, something felt different. I felt that if my father needed me and I wasn't there, I called his neighbor, Don Esteban, to ask him to go around and tell me how he was. He answered that he was in Merida, that he hadn't been to town in weeks. I asked him to go see as soon as he could, but as soon as I hung up I felt something ugly. I can't call it a premonition. It was as if something physically hurt me, and there I didn't want to wait anymore. I told my wife to come with me and I drove from Progreso. I arrived late. The sky was gray and there was wind. The sea was very restless. I arrived at the house. When I got out of the car, I felt something strange. I don't know how to explain it. As if everything was in its place, but it no longer felt the same. As if something was missing. I entered the house and the first thing I saw was sand. Traces of sand and humidity on the floor at the entrance, as if someone had just walked barefoot from the beach to the interior. But the strangest thing is that they were very small, thin traces, women's footprints. I followed the trail to my father's room. The door was open, the bed made, his watch still on the nightstand, his reading glasses on the bureau. The footprints ended there, at the foot of the bed. There were no exit marks. None. As if whoever entered had arrived to have dinner and hadn't left anymore. My wife stayed at the door, but she is witness to the footprints, to how clear they were, that I didn't imagine it. We called the police. We made the reports. We searched the surroundings. There was no indication that he had abandoned the house in a premeditated way. No suitcase, no note, no body, nothing. And to this day, years later, it's not known what happened to my father. I, for my part, didn't want to sell the house. I go to clean it from time to time. I keep it as he left it. It's all I have left of him. That and the uncertainty. Sometimes I go and stay the night. I sit in the hammock he hung on the terrace, looking at the sea as he did. Every time I arrive to see him, I think about what took him away. that there is a north wind and the wind blows strong, when the sky turns black and the waves drive people away from the beach. I remember and convince myself of something I don't dare say out loud, that for the first time I express by writing it to you. I convince myself that his wife came for him, that when the sea took Ophelia away, it didn't take her forever. Maybe it took her body, the part of her that was sick. I don't know. I haven't managed to explain it either. I feel that my father no longer had strength, and that night, when he couldn't anymore, when he wasn't going to be able to anymore, she came back for him. And although it's hard for me to admit it, there's something comforting in that idea. Because if she came to get him, if she came for him, then he's not alone anymore. As much as it hurt him to be alone in his last years. And maybe someday, when I too have gotten tired, when I no longer want to keep looking for explanations, that same sea of Telchak will return an answer or a sign to me. Whatever it is, I'm going to accept it. But for now, the little house is still there, inside of everyone who arrives at the town. Anyone who approaches can see it there. It's still waiting. Thank you for continuing here, community. You know that if you are among those who made it to this point in the episode, it's because you are really made for this. But we repeat the following anyway. Take these stories carefully. Lately, messages have returned from people who listen to the podcast and start noticing strange things. Noises during the night or just when finishing the episode. Shadows that don't seem familiar around the house. Toys? Yes. Toys that seem to move places and even something already almost common. Strange dreams after certain episodes. We don't know if it's coincidence or suggestion, but if you feel something changes around you, please take a break from stories. This is to enjoy it, not to suffer from it. We don't want you to end up being the next protagonists of Tales of the Night. And now, yes, get comfortable, because the story that comes is not for just anyone. You'll hear it. Shall we continue? I'm not sure if what I'm going to tell you is something paranormal, but honestly, any of the possibilities scares me. Really. A couple of years ago, I rented an apartment in an area, something that was for me, but that I really liked. The advantage is that it had 3 bedrooms, one for me, another right in front of mine, and a smaller, more rustic one that was behind the kitchen, more private, but much darker too, to be able to pay the rent. I advertised the other 2 rooms in a local group, and honestly, since I was offering a good price, they were occupied quite quickly. In less than a week, 2 girls moved in, Nadia and Brenda. Each one took a room, and we got along well from the beginning. I think the best thing was that the 3 of us worked a lot, and almost never coincided at home. That made coexistence quite easy. There were no problems, no one makes noise, no one throws parties. Everything flowed. Until one day things changed, and very strange things started happening, although not precisely in the apartment, but in the building. Everything began with what Mrs. Melly told us, the lady who did the cleaning and maintenance. She lived on the roof, in a small room with her sister, a lady already quite old, who couldn't walk. They took her out of her apartment to the roof in a wheelchair from time to time, so she could get some sun. It was like a tradition for them. There, the 2 old ladies would sit and chat, nothing more. Mrs. Melly was very kind. She talked to everyone, and knew half the building's life. Sometimes she talked a lot, too much, well, but you had to love her more. She made herself very lovable, and it was she who one day came down very nervous, almost trembling, saying she had seen someone on the 3rd floor. A woman, she said. A woman dressed in worn clothes, like made of rags. Like an old doll, but all dirty. She said she saw her move quickly, like running, that she followed her, but lost sight of her among the hallways and she smelled horrible. Obviously, we thought it was a homeless person who had gotten in or someone sick, But then, the next day, a neighbor swore she had also seen her, but this time in the basement, in the parking garage. According to what she said, that woman also saw her and walked slowly toward her with that disgusting clothing dragging a leg. But luckily, when she was close, the lady managed to get into the elevator. She said she managed to close the doors just in time. She swore she saw her approach through the steel reflection. I didn't believe her. Brenda didn't either, but Nadia did. She looked uncomfortable every time she left the apartment alone. And besides, I don't know if that had to do with it. But poor Nadia had to spend the night in that dark room, far from the other two. A few more days passed. Mrs. Melly kept insisting that there was something strange in the building. But since no one else was saying anything, things calmed down until something truly strong, terrible happened. One night, Mrs. Melly didn't sleep in the building. It was very strange because she never went out. But that night she had gone with some friends to a prayer, to a rosary or a wake or something like that, according to what they told me. And it was precisely that night that we heard a scream. A horrible, loud scream like of great desperation. It came from above. Several neighbors went up to check. I didn't. To be honest, I was scared to go up. I stayed in my room with the door closed, hoping it wouldn't be anything serious. A while later, I heard commotion and went out. Some neighbors came down saying it was Mrs. Melly's sister, Melly, who had died. She was alone, and according to what they told, it seemed she had dragged herself to the door, as if she had wanted to get out. They found her there, with her face disfigured by fear. One of the neighbors said it seemed like something had chased her, that she had broken nails and an open mouth, as if she had screamed just before dying. An extremely horrible death. Frightening. The official report was that she had a heart attack. Okay. But the strange thing was that although the ambulance arrived soon, no one wanted to go up alone. Everyone said something felt very strange up there. And later, when Mrs. Melly returned, she started crying like I never saw anyone do. She said her sister had told her she saw things, that sometimes there was someone standing at the door during the nights. But she didn't believe her. She thought she had gotten scared by what she heard about the woman in the hallways. After that, Mrs. Melly left the building and returned to her town. She said she wasn't going to continue taking care of the place that had taken her sister away. That's how she said it. She packed the little she had and left the next day. She didn't say goodbye. She just left the keys with the superintendent. I tried not to think much about it, but my roommates, they didn't. They couldn't. Nadia and Brenda were very disturbed. They said they no longer felt comfortable, that this woman in the hallways wasn't a story, but something real. And something very strange was happening. I tried to convince them it wasn't that bad. I told them the lady's death was a tragedy, but that she was a sick lady alone. Not to be afraid, that maybe the ghost thing they had seen. It was nothing more than suggestion, but it didn't work. In less than a week, both had already moved out, each one on her own, without asking me for their deposit. And that's when things got truly strange. That's where my story begins. The one that still today, when telling it, still gives me goosebumps. As I told you, the building is old, and during rainy season, the power goes out very often. It can be a couple of times a month, a couple a week, and sometimes more. It's something annoying, but with time you get used to it. And one night late at night, just after the power went out, I received a call. It was from an unknown number. On screen, it just seemed precisely that message. I didn't answer. I don't usually do it. I started looking for candles, as always. I thought the call would be spam or some error. But then it happened again. 2 days later, the power went out again at night, and precisely at that moment, another call again. Unknown number. Again. Obviously, I didn't answer. And then when the power went out again 2 nights later, again. 3 times already. 3 times it rang just when the power was cut. And that's when I got curious. The 4th time the power went out. When the phone rang again, I answered. I didn't say anything. I just put the phone to my ear and listened. What I heard was my neighbor's dog. Yes, the same little sausage dog that always started barking when the power went out. As if he sensed something strange. He was barking desperately. But the point is that I could hear him twice. I could hear him through the wall coming from the apartment next door, and at the same time I could hear him on the phone. It was the same sound, the same bark with echo, as if whoever was calling me was hearing the same thing, very close to me, somewhere in my apartment. I hung up immediately. I ran out of my apartment. I stayed downstairs with the cell phone in my hand, not knowing what to do. 40 minutes later, when the power returned, I finally knew. The first thing I did was check the empty rooms. Nadia's was just as I had left it, with nothing more than the mattress. I found it. Brenda's. The same. Total silence. There were no signs that anyone had gotten in. No open window. No forced door. And yet, there was one thing that left me thinking all night. When I went up the hallway, it smelled terribly bad. Like garbage. Like rotten meat. And well, that was what finally convinced me to leave too. That was what convinced me that I couldn't continue there. And community. I repeat, I don't know if what I experienced was something supernatural or if someone was getting into the building, if something else was watching me. I don't know. But the idea that someone, whoever it was or whatever it was calling from inside my apartment, from very close to me. The idea that something had been for days with me hiding in one of the empty bedrooms. That scared me more than any ghost story. Sleep well. Close your room's door well. Rest.